There's an episode that Ruth Wilson Gilmore likes to share about being at a conference on environmental justice in Fresno in 2003. People from all over California's Central Valley had gathered to talk about the serious environmental hazards their communities faced, mostly as a result of decades of industrial farming, conditions that still have not changed. There was a workshop for the youth at the conference, in which children were meant to talk about their worries and then decide as a group what needed to be done most in the name of environmental justice. Gilmore, a renowned geography professor and an influential figure in the prison abolition movement, was a guest speaker. She was preparing her talk when someone told her that the kids wanted to speak with her. She went into the room where they were gathered. The children were primarily Latinx, many of them the sons and daughters of farm workers or other people in the agriculture industry. They were of different ages, but most were middle schoolers, old enough to have strong opinions and to distrust adults. They were frowning at her with their shoulders up and their arms crossed. She didn't know these kids, but she understood that they were against her. "What's going on?" she asked. "We hear you're a prison abolitionist," one said. "You want to close prisons?" Gilmore said that was right. She did want to close prisons. "But why?" they asked. And before she could answer, one said, "But what about the people who do something seriously wrong?" Others agreed. "What about people who hurt other people? What about if someone kills someone?" Whether from tiny farm towns or from public housing around cities like Fresno, these children, it was obvious to Gilmore, understood the harshness of the world from their own experience. They were not going to be easily persuaded. "I can understand why you want to ask those questions," she said. "But how about this? Instead of asking whether anyone should be locked up or go free, why don't we think about why we solve problems by repeating the kind of behavior that brought us the problem in the first place?" She was asking them to consider why, as a society, we would choose to allow cruelty and punishment. As she spoke, she felt the kids trying to ignore her, as if she were a new teacher who had come to offer some false argument and tell them it was for their own good. But Gilmore pressed on, determined. She told them that in Spain, where it's quite rare for one person to kill another, the average time you might serve for murdering someone is 7 years. "What? Is that all? 7 years?" The kids were in such disbelief about a 7-year sentence for murder that they relaxed a little bit. They could be outraged about that, instead of about Gilmore's ideas. Gilmore told them that if someone in Spain thinks he is going to solve a problem by killing another person, the response is that the person loses 7 years of his life, to think about what he has done and to figure out how to live when released. "What this policy tells me," she said, "is that where life is precious, life is precious." Which is to say, she went on, in Spain people have decided that life has enough value that they are not going to behave in a violent and life-destroying way toward people who hurt people. And what this demonstrates is that for people trying to solve their everyday problems, behaving in a violent and life-destroying way is not a solution. The children showed Gilmore no emotion except doubt. She kept talking. She believed her own arguments and had given them many years of thought as an activist and a scholar, but it was difficult to persuade the kids. They told Gilmore that they would think about what she said and dismissed her. As she left the room, she felt totally defeated. At the end of the day, the kids made a presentation to the conference, announcing, to Gilmore's surprise, that in their workshop they had come to the conclusion that there were 3 environmental hazards that affected their lives as children growing up in the Central Valley. Those hazards were pesticides, the police, and prisons. "Sitting there listening to the kids stopped my heart," Gilmore told me. "Why? When I gave the kids an example from a different place, I worried they might conclude that some people elsewhere were just better or kinder than people in the Central Valley. In other words, they'd decide what happened elsewhere was irrelevant to their lives." But judging from their presentation, the kids understood the larger point of what I tried to share. Where life is precious, life is precious. They asked themselves, why do we feel every day that life here is not precious? In trying to answer, they identified what makes them vulnerable.